We're here with Coach Wilcox. I think everybody knows the drill for the National Signing Day press conference. We had a couple announcements earlier this morning on social media. So we'll go ahead and get started. As you guys know, let me know in the chat if you have a question and I'll call upon you. All right. Anybody? Jeff, do you want to get us started for Otto?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Justin, can you just talk about, it looks like particularly at offensive line, you address some need. Talk about Martin Tyne a little bit and tell us what he can do for you.
Yeah, Martin is a big athletic guy. Houston, came from Houston and then to East LA. Young as a football player, hasn't played a lot of football, but really big frame and can move. And so really looking forward to getting him here this summer. I would also say we're also going to get a number of guys kind of back off of injury, which should help us in spring ball. I know Coach Blesh is really eager to get to start to work with those guys. And then, it wouldn't be surprising to add another name or two as we enter into summer.
But Martin will not be with you until the summer.
Correct. Yeah, he's got to finish up some classes at the junior college level, and then he'll be with us when we get going in June.
And he's listed as a tackle. Is that
correct?
Where you him? And
yep.
How much can he impact your team this first year, especially as a guy maybe who hasn't played a lot?
Well, to be determined. I mean, we didn't. When we recruit a transfer player or a junior college player, we're always looking at how quickly we think that they could help us on the field. And some of that, there's not an exact science to it. There's, you look at the traits, you look at the work ethic, you look at the kind of the football IQ, and just because they haven't played a lot doesn't mean they can't do that. There's a lot of guys that have played a long time who struggle to make the transition. So it doesn't rule it out by any means. I think what's key is what happens between now and June, and when he gets here in summer, what happens, between June and the first game. And there's going to be a lot of learning going on, but there's a lot of learning going on for a lot of people. And so we do feel good about him and his athletic ability and the traits that he's shown. And now it's, about putting in the work.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim McGill, did you have a question?
Yeah, Coach, talking a little bit more about Martin Tyne. What role does a footwork play in a guy who plays hoops, especially a big, long tackle like he is?
Yeah, it's hard to play good offensive line if you don't have good feet. It's just very rare. So the athleticism is key. Some guys have better feet than others, but I don't think you see a lot of good offensive linemen with bad feet. And so that's one of the things that jumped out is the athleticism, as we mentioned before. And he's got a really big frame. I mean, he's 6'6", and I think he had like an 83-inch wingspan. I mean, he's a tall, long guy, and we're, again, just eager to get him here.
Can you talk a little bit about Marquise Montgomery? He's a guy that didn't see a ton of balls in an offense that seemed to be run dominated. How do you assess a guy like that and what his potential impact might be at the next level?
Well, you look at the opportunities he did get and what he did with those opportunities. I think he's a talented athlete. He's big. I mean, he is a really big receiver, and he can high point the ball. He catches the ball with his hands. And so we looked at the chances he did get and what did he do with those. And then again, you look at the traits, the physical traits, and then the intangibles, the toughness, the work ethic, and all those things. And we feel strongly about him.
And David Byrd, seen by a lot of people as the top long snapper in the country. What kind of an impact can a guy behind the scenes like that have on a program?
Well, I think you all know what kind of impact it has when you don't have somebody that's a good snapper. I mean, it's one of those positions where nobody really talks about it until something goes wrong. So David is a very good snapper. We have in the past scholarshiped a snapper who we think is elite. And so, expectation is for him to come in here and be the snapper. But it's a critical position. I mean, as you all know, it's just something that you take for granted, or a lot of people do. We don't. And so it's a valuable spot. And every 4 years or so, we want to make sure we got a great long snapper on the team. And that's what we're looking for from David.
Okay, we'll go back to Jeff Ferrado. Go ahead, Jeff.
Justin, so none of the three will be with you in the spring, is that correct?
The three that were announced today.
Correct.
Yeah, they will be here in the summer.
Okay. And do you expect, you kind of alluded to the possibility of adding some more offensive linemen. Rosters are more difficult to figure out these days because of everything that's been going on, but do you expect to have more than one or two more newcomers by the summer?
Yep. If I had to guess, Jeff, I'd probably put it around 5 to 7. That's my best guess as of today. But again, these things are so dynamic, but that's what I would anticipate if I were you.
Those might be offensive linemen.
Yeah, offensive line. I would, there's probably not a position that's that we wouldn't take anybody, but certain positions, probably have a more of a need right now. But in the end, we always want to make sure we're taking players that can help our team win, and not just take a player because, and so I think offensive line certainly fits into that category where we could add a player or two in the late spring, early summer. But again, depending on how the roster morphs, that those numbers can change.
You have just, I believe, 2 scholarship quarterbacks on your roster at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a position where you'd like to have a little bit more depth?
Yeah, and I think that's another spot where it wouldn't be surprising to see another scholarship player added this summer. Again, just depends on how everything goes, and the quarterback position in general is always going to be one where there's going to be a lot of movement. That's how it is in college football.
And can you address, there was a lot of talk out there that Cal may have been one of the schools involved recruiting Jaden Rashada in this most recent recruiting session with him. Were you involved in him? And can you just talk about the complications of NIL and what that adds to the equation for you?
We recruit a lot of players at the start of the recruiting process, even, well back into their freshman, sophomore, junior years. We feel really good about the players that we signed today and previously in this class. The name, image, and likeness has certainly transformed recruiting and player movement throughout college football. And until there's more either legislation or regulation, this is how it's going to be. But again, we're really concerned with the guys that are on our team right now.
Okay, we'll go back to Jim McGill.
Can you talk a little bit about the spring roster that came out the other day? Any notable changes you'd like to highlight?
I thought you'd maybe ask me one. Shoot, I don't know that they're.
Well, I'll start with one. Nick Morrow.
Go for it.
Nick Morrow is a gray shirt. Can you talk a little bit about what he adds?
Yeah. So Nick came here. Pretty interesting story. A couple summers ago in a camp, and he was a defensive end, tight end from Flagstaff, and he was tall, 6'7", probably maybe 230, 240, and we put him through a bunch of drills, and he ran pretty dang good and caught the ball pretty impressively for a guy that size, who was, I think, 17 at the time. And so we signed him, but ended up gray shirting him, where he sat out last fall, and he just showed up here mid-year. He came to some games and things like that last year. And now he might be 280, 285. He is a big kid and really long arms and tall. And we're going to play him at offensive line. And, probably the most impressive thing is for a guy that young, who's that big, to be able to jump in these workouts and and compete with everybody else. It's been pretty impressive. But yeah, he's a 6'7", 85 pound guy that looks skinny. And so he's young. He's got a lot of, growing to do. He's going to grow as a person and as a player, but really he has some things that you can't coach. So we're looking forward to getting to work with him in spring ball.
And you have Stanley McKenzie back.
Big Stan,
after some
yeah.
time away.
Yeah, Stanley was home in the fall. Stanley has been through a lot in his time here. We love Stan, and he's back. He looks great. He's doing really well, and he's a nose guard, interior lineman for us, and really, really just glad that he's back with us. He's a super guy, and we love his family, and we're glad he's here, and looking forward to supporting him and watching him grow into the player that he can become.
And some of the guys that were out during the fall, do you expect to have some of them back for spring that you might be able to highlight?
Yeah. So let's see here. I guess the guys that would be out for spring, Calhoun, Gamble, Long, Brett, let's see here, Mason Mangum, Tyson McWilliams, Jaden Roberts, Mason Starling, those guys that be out. Back for spring, we think in some capacity be Lou, Caleb Higgins, TJ Sessions, Bastion Swinney, which, Bastion's a guy who hasn't played very much. He's been dinged up since he's been here. It'd be really important for him to get a solid spring ball. Derek Wilkins, who we lost last spring. Sindo will be back in spring. So, and then a number of other guys that kind of were dinged up, last year, but as many guys as we can possibly get in spring ball, the better.
Okay, we'll go back to Jeff Rado, and Jeff McCulloch. We'll get to you after that. Go ahead, Jeff Rado.
Justin, you referred to Brett Johnson. Can you just talk about how he's doing? And he's been through 2 years in a row of bad injuries and having to come back from that. Where is he at physically? Where is he at mentally, emotionally, in terms of, and it doesn't sound like you'll have him at all in the spring then, huh?
Yeah. Brett, mentally and emotionally, Brett's going to be one of those guys that's, things don't phase Brett. And I know he's been through a lot last couple of years, 2 season-ending injuries. And for some folks, that might be something that would be tough to overcome or maybe seem insurmountable, but he is just kind of a unique character that way. I mean, I think after, the injury he had last fall, so he was going to miss his second year in a row, which is rough. And I think for about a day he was in the tank. And then after that, I mean, he's just like a machine, man. He comes in, he works out, he does his rehab, and he's got a really impressive mindset. And so I'm not worried about him mentally or emotionally. Physically, he looks really good. And he's just, it's been a couple of years, but I think he's going to come back and play really good football. I wouldn't expect anything else.
But it won't be until the summer.
Correct. He'll do some things, I think, in the spring, but we'll hold him out of essentially everything that would be contact. I mean, he'll be moving around on the side, things like that.
And can you talk about what you've seen from Sam Jackson since he's come on campus? And have you learned anything new about him as a young man or as a player or as a competitor since he's been on campus with you?
Well, all these guys are, pretty fresh and finding their way, and, just the daily routine of how we do things and where to go. But he's done a really good job. I know getting along with his teammates, meeting guys, and talked about, when everybody got here, with all the new faces and the movement in college football, the key is how quickly can you get to know each other. And, great teams still have great chemistry, that we're not just a bunch of independent contractors, and Sam's been great with that. All these guys are, fresh into winter workouts, and I can tell you he's a dynamic athlete, that's for sure. And so I think just the more time he spends in the weight room, in with his teammates, getting to know each other, and then we get out on the field with him, we get some time with the coaches. I think each day it's just going to get better and better.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like Ryan McCulloch's question was asked, so we'll open it up for any final questions from anybody. Let me know in the chat. Give you a couple seconds. Jeff Rotto, and then also one announcement to make sure you guys saw yesterday. We announced the spring showcase for April 15th and the first day of practice for March 11th. There'll be some more details later, but just as an FYI, if you missed those, go ahead, Jeff Rotto.
Justin, you talked about chemistry among your players, but you have 3 new coaches. Can you just talk about how that dynamic is coming together and how you guys are, getting along and working together so far?
Couldn't be any better, to be honest with you. All those guys are pros. I mean, Jake had been here before, so he knows the lay of the land. You can just, offensively, different style of play, and it's something that I know the players are very, very excited about. Coach Blesh, who's been a coordinator, been very successful with the offensive line and the run game. I know he's been a joy to be around. And then Tim Plow, who's also been a coordinator. So we got 3 guys that have coordinator experience, and you see them all, they get in there and we're talking football, and it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of experience in there, and they all got a ton of energy. And so those guys have been great. Really, really pleased that they're here with us. And I think they're, we got to get some things kind of settled and talk through language and semantics and some of those things to make sure that everything's dialed in, and then the players will be ready to start meeting and spending time with the coaches here soon.
Has the time they've been on campus so far been devoted to a large degree to recruiting, and are you just starting to do those other things now?
Well, it's kind of combination of both. I mean, when you're in January, it's heavy recruiting mode, and then when you're not recruiting and you got 4 hours, then you go in and close the door of the staff room and you start talking through verbiage and formation names and all those things. So it's really all of it, and it's kind of balancing your time. And now that the signing day is upon us, we'll spend a lot more time just in the football offices talking through those things specifically. Recruiting never really stops, but we're not traveling anymore, and we'll be able to just kind of hone in on getting prepared for spring football.